All right, part two of explaining the history, of magic in Thundarr the Barbarian. We went over in part one the basic gist that magic has one of two sources: either hi- advanced technology or people that have innate superpowers, more or less. Ariel obviously is someone who has innate superpowers. It's actually not clear if Ariel should be considered a mutant. One fan theory is that this is just part of her costume, a piece of jewelry she wears. However, the way it's matched to her hairline raises questions because you don't see anything else. You just see this that looks like a piece of metal. Is it actually part of her face? We don't know. Is there, because, like, the logic of all of the people who have innate magic being some kind of mutants does actually seem to be more or less true, which would mean Ariel is a mutant, just one that's mostly human looking. Anyways, so now I'm going to go over each episode and talk about aspects that this particular episode added to the concept of magic in the show. Like Secret of the Black Pearl, the first episode broadcast is also the episode that introduced the concept of anti-magic. The Black Pearl was a powerful anti-magic relic. Throwing the Black Pearl at something enchanted with magic, like the Statue of Liberty, broke the spell that caused it to be moving around. And in the process, created this magic feedback that's, well, I mean, in the episode as aired, it kind of looked like maybe Gemini died. We don't really know. There's just giant burst of magic, and after the giant burst of magic, Gemini's gone. It's later revealed that Gemini used a form of teleportation, but yeah. The thing is, though, is that was a very powerful anti-magic effect. There's a more subtle one that pops up in several episodes and pops up in Gemini's Citadel, actually. The ability to nullify the powers of someone who has innate magical abilities by using some sort of equipment to temporarily nullify those. Gemini has a cage that he shoves Ariel into, and while inside that cage, Ariel can't use her powers. Now, she figures out that if she sticks her hand outside the cage bars, she can do certain spells just from that one hand that's outside the cage bars, which annoys Gemini rather greatly. But, you know, admit the cage is still a major inconvenience. Now, moving on. Harvest of Doom. Now, this is interesting because this is the episode with the Dark Wizard, who is the mastermind behind the events of the episode, but he's this um patron of the Karoks. But while he is financially backing the operation, he's not directly involved in any other way. Interesting, but doesn't really add a huge amount to things. Oh yeah, also one thing that's noteworthy here is teleportation. Teleportation is a category of kinds of magic, and the Dark Wizard using black swirls of smoke around himself to teleport is reminiscent of a method used by Gemini, where he also creates a cloud of smoke around himself and whoever he wants to teleport with him. Gemini can bring several people with him. The variant of teleportation that Ariel knows seemingly only works on a single target. She has used it on another person, Crom, but Again, when she used it on Crom, it only teleported Crom. And of course, there are people who have machinery that can do teleportation. Like Scullus, his flying war machine, has a whole like beam me up Scotty's effect, where he just like commands his ship to beam him into the ship. Mindok zaps people with these electric bolt rays to teleport them. He seemingly can't do that to himself. So it's obvious, again, these are like four different abilities that count as teleportation. They don't work the same way. They really don't. And this kind of goes back into the whole like idea that they're not a single ability, but rather a category of things that kind of sort of fall into the same general idea. So, moving on. That was Harvest of Doom and Mindok the Mind Menace. Yeah, there's a whole lot of things that Mindok can do. Raiders of the Abyss. Raiders of the Abyss is the one where we have the Abyss Wizard. We don't really know a whole lot about the Abyss Wizard because the fact that the main plot point with him is he used to live in the Abyss before Morag and Morag's raiders forced him out, which suggests that the Abyss Wizard really isn't that powerful. After Morag and his raiders set up camp in the Abyss Wizard made himself a new place to live somewhere nearby that really wasn't all that impressive looking. It's literally a treehouse. Things we learned about the magic here, not a whole lot, honestly. Although there is one thing that's interesting. The Raiders of the Abyss have a thing to drain the vitality of someone with the vapors of life. They drain the vitality from Ariel, and she temporarily loses the ability to use magic. It's not entirely clear if this is just her being drastically weakened and thus her magic powers being weaker, or if it just like completely shuts off her ability to use magic. But it does. It has several rather drastic effects on people. Anyways, next, Treasure of the Moks. This is one of the episodes that has very, very little in the way of magic in it, other than the fact that weaponry can be equal to magic in the scope of its power. Ariel doesn't have the power to just blow up Captain Corden's uh, floating fortress and has to, have help to fight Corden and her pirates. And of course, the whole like fire lances thing. Those are, uh, when used by Corden, a powerful enough weapon that even Ariel has difficulty defending against it. Which, again, they're not being used properly. They're just being thrown at people, at which point they explode, but whatever. Attack of the Amazon Women. This is an episode that has a proper wizard duel. Straya gets a one-on-one with Ariel, which Straya eventually loses. But the simple fact is that it's a proper wizard duel. There's not really a huge amount here, other than the fact that Straya is not human. Straya is referred to as an Amazon, and the Amazons in this case are kind of, sort of, mer people. They live in the water. They can breathe underwater. You don't ever see male ones though, so it's there, there's questions to that need to be answered here. And again, it's like Straya has the ability to use magic. Straya looks like a mutate, like a shark person. None of the other ones do. All of the other ones just look like blue skinned humans. Even the ones that work for Straya just look like blue skinned humans. And that's about it for that episode. The Brotherhood of Night. This is an episode that's noteworthy because of the fact that Zevon and Infernus have a clash where Zevon is actually legitimately a being whose powers are not truly innate. He was given his powers by an outside force and is using them to try to co-opt Infernus into being his servant, thinking that if he could get Infernus to be a servant, that he'll be able to conquer the world or something. Well, two things about this. One, we never find out what turned Zevon into a were creature. Zevon was originally a wolf. He didn't turn himself into a were creature. It's possible that it was some sort of bizarre random accident, but we never find out. We do, however, find out that seemingly by random chance, there's a specific pool of water that's in some way magical in the remains of Washington, D.C., specifically the reflecting pool at the Washington Monument, that anytime one of the were creatures is doused in this particular pool, it turns them back to normal. So all of the humans that get turned by Zevon, to include Infernus, get dunked into this pool and stop being were creatures. Notably, Zevon turns into a wolf. And all of the other were creatures were turned by Zevon. See, this wasn't one of those like contagious plague kind of were creatures. Only Zevon seemed to have the ability to turn people. And, after everyone got dunked, the werewolf curse is gone. Except we never know where it came from in the first place. Is it that some wizard was doing a magical experiment and Zevon just happened to be the result of that experiment? We don't know. If it was something done by a wizard, in theory, he could do it again, right? Or it could have just been some weird random fluke that we don't understand. Either way, we don't actually know what it was. Also noteworthy here is the fact that Infernus doesn't have any innate powers. He's a tech user. Every single one of Infernus's abilities is gear. He has a flying hover sled, which is, a fancy device that only he knows how to use, but it's just a machine. He has a scepter that he uses as a weapon. It's a weapon, not a superpower. And also his entire fortress, all technology. And this is something that's very noteworthy because of the fact that prior to this, some of the characters, it's ambiguous as the source of their powers. Like Gemini. What did he have powers before getting turned into a cyborg, or did he get those because he's a cyborg? We don't know. We never find that out. Not even when he comes back in a later episode as Janus. We still don't find out. In fairness, though, it is explicitly stated that he was powerless without his gear. So all of these fancy devices that he has on him, that's where he gets all of his wizard abilities. It also suggests that Infernus might have the ability to recreate all that stuff if given the proper opportunity to do so. And that raises a lot of interesting questions about where all of Infernus's gear came from, because that's a lot of stuff to build in only a few years. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. But again, the important part here is that he has no innate powers. Moving on. Oh, also though, despite not having innate powers, Infernus actually had impressive abilities. Ariel was not taking that guy lightly. In fact, Zevon turning him was a sneak attack. Zevon had to distract Infernus, and then in order to get the drop on him and get close enough without getting incinerated by one of those heat rays that Infernus loved throwing around. Challenge of the Wizards! This one is fun because of the sheer number of wizards and the fact that this is one of those rare episodes where we see multiple wizards in the same episode. Usually there's only the villain of the story. Well, this one spices that up by having 4 different wizards competing against each other in a contest, and Thundarr and Ariel getting forced to um, act as Sholo's minions. Which it's hinted that each of these wizards has a considerable set amount of territory. See, Sholo has an area that is built in the ruins of Las Vegas. Is it possible that Sholo has all of Las Vegas as his turf? Maybe. Then again, most of Las Vegas is ruined garbage that no one really has a reason to fight over, so, you know. But noteworthy here is the fact that Scorpus made a bet with Mazem about giving the other a whole bunch of human slaves. This is a bit of a head scratcher because of the sheer number that they quoted here is like, wait a second, have we even seen that many people ever in the entire series? No. The answer is no. We have not seen any population center that has that many people in it. Not even Vano Citadel had that many people in it. And Vano Citadel was the biggest place we ever saw in the series in terms of, population. Seriously, Argoth, hardcore badass who had his own fortress city. We never see where Mazim, Scorpus, or Chom live. Chom is just kind of there as the 4th guy. Doesn't do much of anything. Doesn't say anything interesting. Mazim has the second most interesting role of the 4 because, she's the one who pokes fun at Sholo for screwing things up. Thundarr and Ariel, because power of being protagonists, managed to defeat the minions of Mazim, Chom, and Scorpos. And Mazim's minions were the most formidable of the 3. What this says about Mazim's personal combat prowess is anyone's guess, because the only one of the 4 wizards in this episode that we actually see do anything personally is Sholo. He's the only one who actually fights. The other 3 just kind of like show up and talk. And in the case of Chom, he doesn't talk very much either. But it's interesting seeing wizards that are not fighting the heroes and instead interacting with other wizards. Also, there's that whole thing of like the helmet of power giving whoever wields it enhanced abilities. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. No, it's not explained. No, we don't know who actually created it. No, we don't know why it was in that dam. No, we don't actually understand how on earth Sholo and those other 3 came to this agreement either. But they did. And again, though, that goes back to that whole Council of Wizards thing. It's plainly obvious here that Sholo, Mazim, and those other 2 are playing by the rules. They're following social courtesies. They're not just fighting each other directly. It's not a bloodthirsty battle. It's a gentleman's contest. And that raises a whole lot of questions about the setting and goes back to that whole thing of Thundarr treating wizards as an evil organization. Probably has a significant amount of truth to it. And Challenge of the Wizards is one of the biggest examples of that. Valley of the Man-Apes. Literally nothing. No, seriously. This is one of those episodes where the bad guy is not a wizard and the only magic user in the episode is Ariel. And the threat is a person making something that's kind of sort of a weapon out of pre-cataclysm tech that doesn't really work very well and gets trashed rather quickly. It's kind of sad. The actual most interesting thing in Valley of the Man-Apes is that it's an episode that has non-humans who aren't evil. Yeah, the local villagers are dwarves and like 3 feet tall or less. Explanation? No, thank you. Yeah, that's the thing that happened. They're not magic dwarves though. They're just tiny people. Stalker from the stars. Now, the Stalker is an extraterrestrial entity that is rather scary looking. And it has abilities that are pretty similar to those of a wizard. I mean, yes, it's super strong and can do a whole bunch of things related to being a alien monster. But it has powers that are kind of like a wizard. Like it actually has the ability to use animation. It when it zaps things with its energy, it can make them act on its behalf. That is again, also the stalker is clearly a sentient alien life form because it flies to Earth in an alien spaceship and at the end of the episode, that alien spaceship gets sent back into space with the stalker inside it, which is one of those non resolutions where, like, yes, the stalker is gone for now. How many minutes until it comes back? Seriously. Anyways, though, again, though, this is a non human who has the ability to use magic. The previous example was Straya, who, oh, it's not actually clear if Amazons are actually just mutated humans. Could just be a specific kind of mutated human. We don't know. Portal into time. This is the episode with Crom, who has a time machine. And when using said time machine to go into the past, Crom and Ariel are both able to use their magic powers in the past, prior to the cataclysm. That's actually the most noteworthy thing here. It does, however, establish that time travel is totally a thing in this setting. And also that Crom, while he has innate powers, uses machinery and technology to enhance his abilities and do things that he doesn't have the innate ability to do himself. Because again, the time machine, it's a machine that he has built into his fortress. And he, you know, can't time travel without it. Also noteworthy for being an example of a enemy who has the same magical weakness that Ariel does, where if you tie him up, he can't do spells anymore. Battle of the Barbarians. Kublai. Kublai is an example of someone who uses an external power source. He wears a hat that has a ruby in it, but all of his magical powers come from the ruby in the hat. Somewhere there is a scepter that can turn off the ruby. No, it's just not explained where any of this stuff comes from. Clearly, it's a magical weapon of some sort, but we don't really know anything about um, where it came from, why it works the way it does, because Kublai's not actually seemingly directly using the ruby to do magic. It just kind of sort of gives him the ability to do magic. Um, yeah, that was about it. This episode's only other noteworthy thing is the fact that Zogar actually goes toe to toe with Thundarr in a proper duel. And it's, a serious fight. Den of the Sleeping Demon. Yeah, again, there are no magic users other than Ariel in this one. Unless this was the episode that had Merlik in it. Oh yeah, this is the episode that had Merlik in it. Merlik is an example of someone who has the ability to use magic and is not evil, which means that Ariel isn't the only magic user who isn't evil. There's actually very few of them, seemingly, and that's an interesting recurring plot point. Other things. The Sleeping Demon is a creature who was created with bioengineering before the Cataclysm and has been in suspended animation since before the Cataclysm. And then Judag wakes it up. Judag, however, finds out that it's just a weird monster and has no interest in serving him or granting him superpowers and kind of eats him or something like that. Thing is, though, pre-cataclysm genetic nightmare, which of course makes you wonder if certain of the monsters that you see in this series are actually creatures created by bioengineering prior to the cataclysm, and also whether or not certain of the aspects of the show where you see mutated people were intentionally mutated or mutated by something that was created intentionally and not just random chance. Yeah, he's also like the least powerful magic user we ever saw in the show. It's like one of those things that's like in TTRPG terms, this would be like a level 1 noob. Shara is equally inexperienced at being a, adventurer. Anyway, though, Wizard Wars. This is another one where we have more than one wizard in the episode. There's very few of those episodes. However, Skullus and Octagon are fighting a turf war. In the case of Octagon, it's a defensive battle. He has his octagon-shaped fortress city, and Skullus is trying to take over. Not really anything particularly noteworthy other than that. Other than the fact that Skullus has the ability to create an army of energy constructs as soldiers. Octagon uses the giant power generator in his fortress to enhance his abilities, but he has abilities without it. Because after Thundarr and Ariel break it, he, still has the ability to fight and then runs off because his powers are drastically weaker than they used to be, but he still has them. Interesting thing though, because the fact that this is an example we see where we genuinely have a pair of wizards fighting a turf war. Not something we see in any of the other episodes. Also, it's kind of sort of hinted in, if you look back in Challenge of the Wizards, that avoiding such a conflict is the reason why Sholo, Mazim, and those other two made a gentleman's agreement instead of, actually fighting over it. Because let's face it, the collateral damage of having a fight like this is pretty impressive. Like, Skullus was not pulling his punches, and the crap Skullus was doing was drastic. Like, Skullus demolished an entire town as part of his war against Octagon. He goes to this town that has humans in it, enslaves them to be his mind-controlled minions, then blows up their town. Doesn't kill them in the process, though. He just blows the town to bits. Why? Good question. I think he was actually trying to kill Thundarr and Ariel. I'm not sure. But anyway, though. Yeah, that was a thing. It's actually kind of hinted in the episode that we don't see Skullus's actual home base because he has two different war machines he uses in the episode, and one of them is a land machine, the other one's a flying machine, and you never see them at the same time. And no, it's not plausible that one of them transforms into the other. That would be weird, especially since they didn't even show it. Oh yeah, I did actually have those here. Yeah, big old ship. And that thing, that is the size of a rather large building. Is it as big as that thing that Mindok built? I'm not sure. It is big though. Like this here, it looks small compared to the rest of the thing, but this is like an actual like room. Don't ask me how the room has a floor that walks sideways. It just does. Again, weird superpowers are at play here. How Skullus is able to make people walk sideways, I'm not going to ask. This thing is actually seen doing combat, though. Unlike um, Mindok's thing, it's like Thundarr, Ariel, and Ukla have to actually do a proper siege on this thing because Skullus parked it outside Octagon Citadel because he's fighting Octagon, and this thing actually is shooting at Octagon Citadel. And also, it has an army of his battles bot things defending it that Ariel and Thundarr have to annihilate utterly. The flying thing actually doesn't get used for a whole lot. Island of the Body Snatchers. This is a particularly important one because of the fact that the evil witch Cersei has a different approach to using magic than most characters in the show, and also it goes into the nuts and bolts of how magic works in ways that other episodes just don't. Like one, Ariel actually learns how to do something by watching Cersei do it. Because one of Cersei's tricks is she turns people into frog monsters. Ariel learns how to undo it by rummaging through Cersei's laboratory. She learns how to use certain of Cersei's powers, which is quite interesting, especially since after the body swap is undone and Cersei dies, Ariel still knows how to do that and can do it in her own body. Yeah, that's interesting. So this actually does, but the thing though is that um, the whole aspect of wizards being superpowered mutants isn't as simple as this is what you're born with the ability to do. It's an innate potential that you have certain things that you can learn to do. It's not just what you're born with. Because again, Ariel actually learns a spell in this episode, which is like the only time it happens ever in the entire series, honestly. The series doesn't go that deep into the nuts and bolts of how magic works in any other episode. But the fact that it's the only episode where this happens makes it essential watching if you want to understand the setting. Also, it has a whole bunch of vague allusions as to who imprisoned Cersei on that island she was uh, exiled to and why. Yeah, that's a whole thing that raises more questions than answers, but they're questions that give you information about the setting. It kind of like it's like, okay, so did the Council of Wizards do this? Because, you know, again, it's one of those things where people make an allusion to the existence of an organization without actually naming the organization. City of Evil. This is an interesting one because of the fact that A, it has the gauntlet of power in it, which allegedly can give an ordinary human being the ability to do magic the way a wizard does. Do we actually see that in action? No. It does seemingly make Surratt stronger, but Surratt seemingly just used it as an auxiliary power source. Which goes back to that helmet from the episode with Sholo, where it just makes the person who's using it have stronger spells or something. Thing is, Sholo lost a 3-on-1 fight with Ariel and her friends, so it didn't make him that powerful. In the case of Surratt, he also gets his ass handed to him. The gauntlet gets destroyed. The explosion of the gauntlet of power demolishes half of the city of thieves and leaves it into a smoldering ruin. And that wrecked the biggest source of advanced technology this series had ever seen. Because, see, the city of thieves was shrunken down to a tiny size prior to the cataclysm. And well, prior to the cataclysm, they were stuck with using pre cataclysm technology. The city of thieves had been working on it. They couldn't unshrink themselves without having Surratt and the Gauntlet of Power to get the job done. They did seemingly know how to do the unshrinking process. It's just that none of the people in the city of thieves actually knew how to get the job done. Or okay, they knew how to get the job done. They didn't have the physical ability to do it. And of course, Vortak is like, yes, Surat, if you help us return to our normal size and live in the real world, we will act as your loyal minions for the rest of our lives. Which, quite frankly, if Surat's a, shall we say, um, good ally, that might have actually been a particularly advantageous relationship for both sides. This episode is interesting because the fact that it has Ariel hunting Surat, which is a role that you don't normally see Ariel doing because she's acting offensively because she's trying to foil Surat's plan to well, one, Surratt needs to steal the Gauntlet of Power from Gorn. In the process of that, he turns Gorn into a rampaging monster, but he gets the Gauntlet of Power, uses it to turn the City of Thieves into a full-size city. Note, the design of the City of Thieves is a weird futuristic architecture, and this is clearly not what it looked like before it got shrunk. Because this is a whole lot of sci-fi nonsense buildings. How exactly this got turned into is not explained, although we do actually see them taking these little flying ships, flying outside the pyramid and bringing things back into the pyramid. Which we don't really understand exactly what's going on here, but they're pulling in resources from outside. It's why it's called the City of Thieves. It's because the people living in it are stealing things from the world outside the city. And it's actually quite impressive in terms of being a futuristic sci-fi place. But it gets blown up. Yeah, kind of unfortunate. It's not completely destroyed, just, smashed. Anyway, though, so Moving on. Last Train at Doomsday. This has Gemini's return as Janus. Honestly, aside from that, no, not much else happens. This does actually have one particularly interesting plot point in it, though, is that Gemini's new minions are this race of rock people who are some sort of bizarre mutants who um are born as these soft, fleshy creatures that are semi-humanoid, and then in order to turn into their adult form, they could have to be dunked into this special water that normally petrifies things. Except these creatures, it just makes their skin harden. Whereas if it's a human, they just get straight up turned to stone and die. Um, yeah, that's one of those magical environment things again, and it's no one explains that. No one explains that. Mm-mm. If this is something that Gemini had been working on for years, you could maybe possibly go with the idea that this was somehow Gemini's creation. But this is someplace Gemini set up shop after he got defeated in Manhattan. And seemingly this is Gemini living as a bum and not having a proper citadel. He presumably found them and forced them to work for him. He didn't create them. So what the heck happened to create them? Again, this goes back to the idea that the Great Cataclysm some way fundamentally changed certain parts of the world. It didn't change the physical laws of the universe, but it added things to the world that didn't exist before. Like the pool of power that the Sun Sword is charged in at mass for the Stolen Sunsword. This introduces several plot points that are interesting setting elements that aren't really directly part of concept of magic. Oh, I didn't actually put in the pool of power. I should fix that problem. Anyway, negative lightning. Um, Yeah, this isn't the only episode. Like Mazim's minions have the ability to summon something similar, but like a bizarre form of weather that doesn't exist in real life. Like it's acid rain. It's not acid rain like, oh no, I'm going to die when my skin gets dissolved, kind of acid rain. It's just annoying because as you can see here, it looks weird and is supposedly, not good to drink or something, but it doesn't kill you standing outside for a few minutes in it or even seriously hurt you. It's apparently just like gives you like a burning sensation on your skin or something. The red lightning, on the other hand, yeah, don't get struck by that. Now, this effect it has on the Sun Sword is kind of strange. Ariel thinks that all they really need to do is recharge it, which is like, okay, it's like a negative energy compared to the Sun Sword or something. I don't know. I think Ariel actually calls it negative lightning too, as if she's seen it before and knows what it is. Mega storms. Yeah. Well, anyway. That's actually the most interesting part of this episode is the whole like Negastorm thing and the pools of power. Because the pools of power are underground. They're kind of like magma lakes, except that they have some sort of magical energy in them. It's not, heat. It's congealed magic. Two left. Trial by Terror. Now, this is the episode that actually has uh, Artemis talk about the Council of Wizards and how his work at taking over Thorax town is rooted in the idea that he's trying to prove himself to the Council of Wizards as someone worthy of being a member. And he fails. Thundarr and Ariel kick his ass. And it's kind of hinted that the villagers force him to be their servant. No, seriously. Like Artemis's fate seems to be a variation of public service where he gives up on being a warlord and decides to just, live peacefully with the people who he was previously trying to force to be his servants. Oh, also, Sheriff Corp. This is another one where this isn't a human, it's a pig mutant. Or, well, okay, sorry. Corb is human. Corb's deputies are pig mutants. Mm, None of the other people in this town are pig mutants. Corb made them deputies, not the townspeople. Now, how Corb got to be sheriff is a good question. We don't really ever find anything out about that. He's just the local lawman, and he has these pig mutants as his deputies. And they work for Artemis. It's kind of hinted that they didn't always work for Artemis and that Artemis coercing them into being his goons was part of the chain of events that led to the episode. Is that they weren't always his goons. They, at one point in time, were actually kind of sort of trying to be, proper citizens. It's not particularly well explained. It's just kind of like alluded to. It's thing is though, this episode has the whole Council of Wizards thing as the big deal, and also the fact that Artemis is actually a pretty tough guy. He built a death ship as part of his trial to prove himself. Well, the death ship gets blown up with him in it, and he just crawls out of the wreckage like, "Ow, that hurt. Why do you break my stuff?" And that's about as far as it goes. And last, we have Prophecy of Peril. Prophecy of Peril is notable for being the only episode in which we actually see someone go from being an ordinary human to someone who has the power. When Valerie Storm gets kidnapped from the past by Vashtar using the Gem of Glory, Vashtar accidentally gives her the ability to use magic. Yeah, this was totally an accident. He was firing an eye laser that happened to hit the Gem of Glory and then hit her after it hit the Gem of Glory. See, it's stated in the episode that Vashtar's powers come from the Gem of Glory. He doesn't actually have powers innately. As for the Crystal of Prophecy, we never find out who created it or why. Okay, well, we kind of sort of know why. It's more that we don't know how they created it. My personal best guess is that it's a combined effort of Maya and Valerie, but we don't really know. How Vashtar knows that the Crystal of Prophecy contains a prophecy of his own personal doom, again, we don't know. It's entirely possible that he learned of its existence by studying the time stream with the Gem of Glory, because, again, he does all sorts of weird stuff with the Gem of Glory, like using it as a TV screen to watch the past. Yeah, that's how he finds Valerie Storm. He's uh it's a weird episode with temporal paradoxes in it. No, seriously, because it has the temporal paradox in it of the prophecy is the reason why Vashtar went into the past and abducted Valerie Storm and brought her to the future. Then Valerie Storm gets turned into a wizard in the future, fights Vashtar, and eventually defeats Vashtar, destroying the Gem of Glory in the process. And also somehow sending herself back into the past prior to the cataclysm at approximately the same time that she left. Yeah, that got weird. And it was the final episode. So, no, there is not going to be any explanation for what the heck was going on. But yeah, it's an interesting episode because the fact that we see Valerie get turned into a winged humanoid when she is empowered. Yeah, that's Valerie with actual wings sticking out of growing out of her back, and she's actually flying in this scene. And this is her before getting turned into a wizard. Yeah, because that weird red dress is actually kind of sort of something she wore. Because of the fact that she's a inexperienced magic user, she doesn't really have any particularly complicated abilities. Although again, she is the person who figures out how to destroy the Gem of Glory. Although um it's not entirely clear how Valerie understands the gem, because it's possible that the process of getting empowered by it somehow gives you some sort of innate understanding of it, but um, there's not a whole lot to explain it. Also, we don't know what happened to Vashtar after the gem was destroyed. And that's it. All of the episodes and all of the weird magical nonsense that happened in the show. Again, weird magical nonsense pops up in every single episode. Although in certain episodes, Ariel's the only source of magical nonsense and doesn't actually provide a huge allotment of it in some episodes. Alrighty then. Well, I guess next time I'll do a more detailed examination of the specifics of what magic can do in Thundarr, because that gets weird. Alrighty, see you guys next.